President Trump issuing a new warning to Iran after the regime threatened to begin enriching uranium at weapons-grade levels if a new nuclear deal is not reached. The president tweeting, quote, "Iran has just issued a new warning. Rouhani says that will enrich uranium to any amount we want if there is no nuclear deal. Be careful with the threats, Iran. They can come back to bite you like nobody has bitten before." Joining us now is Nile Gardiner, director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom. Mr. Gardiner, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I want to read to you, following up on what the president was tweeting there, what Iran President Hassan Rouhani said in his cabinet meeting yesterday. It reads, "Our advice to Europe and the United States is to go back to logic and to the negotiating table. Go back to understanding, to respecting the law and resolutions of the UN Security Council. Under those conditions, all of us can abide by the nuclear deal." Now, we have that. And then just yesterday on Special Report, Representative Michael McCaul said this. Take a listen.
And I must say that the president exercised great caution in trying to de-escalate this conflict, not escalate it. But one thing he made clear in the room was that he will not stand for a nuclear Iran. And that is his red line. And if Iran chooses to cross that red line and get nuclear weapons, he will respond in full force.
Respond in full force. Exactly how do you see that?
Well, firstly, I have to say that Iran is resorting to blackmail here. And let's not forget that we are dealing with one of the most barbaric regimes on the face of the earth. This is a regime that is hell-bent on developing a nuclear weapons program. It is not interested in abiding by the Iran nuclear deal, which is why the United States withdrew from this disastrous agreement. And President Trump is sending exactly the right message to the Iranian regime, that the United States and the free world will stand up to evil. And the U.S. is applying a policy of maximum pressure against Iran, which is working. The U.S. sanctions that are in place now are bringing this brutal regime to its knees economically, which is why the regime is now lashing out. And the United States is calling upon all of its allies across the world to stand with America in confronting the Iranian threat through the use of sanctions, but also sending a very clear message that Iran's attempts to develop a nuclear weapons program will not be tolerated. And the United States certainly is putting in place everything necessary in order to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear weapons regime. And the United States is standing with its allies, including Israel. And after all, only this week, just this week, the Iranian regime repeated its threat to wipe out Israel. And there was a threat issued by an Iranian national security official saying that they would destroy Israel within 30 minutes if the United States launched any kind of attack on Iran. So this kind of very ugly, menacing rhetoric is coming from Tehran at this time. We are dealing with a genocidal regime. We need to stand up to evil, and certainly President Trump is doing all he can to stand up to the Iranian threat.
Well, and a regime that's showing signs of desperation, and Rouhani mentions our European allies in that statement as well. Can you explain their position here? What do they do under this pressure?
Well, I have to say, unfortunately, as is often the case, some of America's European allies, especially the French and the Germans, and in particular the European Union as a whole, are still in an appeasement mindset with regard to Iran. They're still clinging to this Iran nuclear agreement, which is dead in the water. And we need to see all of America's allies in Europe standing with the United States in terms of enforcing sanctions against Iran. Unfortunately, the EU is trying to bypass U.S. sanctions on Iran, sending completely the wrong signal. And so we need to see a change in this very weak-kneed approach taken by European allies. They need to stand together with the U.S. in confronting what is an extremely grave threat that the entire free world is facing today.
And quickly, I just wanted to hit on North Korea. We don't have a lot of time here, but Reuters is reporting that North Korea's mission to the UN is accusing the United States of being hell-bent on hostile acts, despite saying that they want to talk. And we know the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has said that this summit, this meeting that happened on Sunday, has really opened up possible talks again for denuclearization. Where are we on this?
Well, I think it's a further illustration of the fact that the North Korean regime cannot be trusted at all. And this is a further reason why the United States needs to maintain this approach of maximum pressure against North Korea. We need to see the full enforcement of US and UN Security Council sanctions that are in place against the North Korean regime. We also need to see the return of US-South Korean military exercises in order to send a clear signal to Pyongyang. And in addition to that as well, I do think the United States, the entire free world, have to focus significantly upon the appalling human rights record of North Korea. After all, 120,000 political prisoners are held in gulags across North Korea. And so we do need to confront North Korea in the same way that we are confronting the Iranian regime as well, with strength and resolve in the face of sheer barbarism.
So much on the president's plate. Nile Gardiner, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.